What's going on, guys? This is the Illegal Defense, episode 9. We're going to get into some college football. A lot of great games last week. Some ranked games that we wanted to kind of see how these teams matched up. So we're going to get into it right with the Ohio State and Penn State game. So,
Yeah, and so we had number two Ohio State go into Happy Valley. This was a big game for a lot of reasons. The Big Ten not as strong all around this year, so you know, to a ranked matchup in the Big Ten is kind of a big deal because of the top heaviness of that conference.
right.
This was the kind of the first big test for Ohio State. I mean, they had Iowa the prior week, but Iowa was a team that great defense, but everyone knows that their
Their
offense was
offense
not good,
struggles.
and Ohio State was going to be able to pretty much handle that without much issue unless everything went wrong for them. So yeah, this game, Ohio State and Penn State, they have a pretty nice rivalry going. Usually they play each other pretty close. And this game didn't disappoint. This was
Yeah,
a
it was a really good game.
it was a good game. It was a tight game for most of it. Both teams were able to make some big plays offensively, defensively, and really kind of trade shots till later in the game where Ohio State
Just ran away with it for the most
where they
part.
pulled away. They kind of just turned that switch on and really just clamped down defensively and offensively was just able to um, grab some big plays. Especially in the run game where they were really
They were really
struggling to run the
struggling, yeah.
ball. Trevion Henderson goes with two rushing touchdowns. But yeah, this was a game that we knew was going to be a big noon game. It was a change of pace. Usually, if Ohio State plays
Plays the
Penn
big
State,
game
it's a
games
night
night.
game.
Yeah.
Big noon might have saved Ohio State in this instance, especially with how the game
I
went.
mean, yeah, even regardless, they had a great environment there.
Yeah, they
So,
still had a great environment. You can only imagine the difference if it was night. It was a night game there. It's even up a few
yeah,
levels from
it's
what they did in that noontime game. But yeah, look, Ohio State struggled running the ball, but they had a big game. Still being able to throw the ball. Marvin Harrison Jr. continues to
still has a
impress.
great game.
People keep talking about him as probably he'll be one of the best. He'll be the best receiver in the game in a few years. A few years into his NFL career, that's what people are projecting at this point. He's just kind of unguardable. And then huge game for JT Tuimoloau. Coming out party for him. He's a
Yeah.
guy on. I actually have him in my fantasy college football team, and he hasn't been producing. But a guy of his pedigree, I knew to just wait. He's
Be
gonna get
patient with
his
them,
yeah,
yeah.
he's gonna get his moment. He's still a sophomore, but he played so much, even as a true freshman that committed so late in the process.
Right.
And yeah, this game he kind of showed you a little bit of everything that he could do here. Maybe one of the best stat lines ever for a defensive player. He comes out, 2 sacks, 2 interceptions.
One goes back for
Yeah,
six.
one he takes back to the house for a touchdown. Forced fumble recovery,
Yeah,
two pass
that had to be
deflections.
at least like that had to be the defensive game of the century from any defensive player,
Yeah,
NFL or college football. To do that in that environment alone,
yeah, just ridiculous, and
uh,
especially time wise, the timing of those plays. Like we saw, Super Bowl, Aaron Donald comes up with a big sack late in the game.
right,
Like the timing of these things matter almost as much as making the plays itself.
yeah,
He was able to make some of these in crunch time to really get his team over the edge and put the game out of reach for Penn State. Because,
right.
like we said, Ohio State came on late, but he was, that pick six was really
It
what,
was a pivotal
yeah, it
moment,
made
and
it,
it just
too far out of reach for that much time and
right.
really kind of put the nail in the coffin for this game. So, huge win for the Buckeyes here. Tough loss for Penn State. It's a game that they probably feel like they could have won if a few other things went their way. Still good effort from them.
Yeah.
Hard to say anything bad about that. They kind of
They
did
ran
what
the
they needed to
ball
do.
really well against Ohio State
They
too.
ran the ball. The
So
scheme wise, they were able to, one, their secondary.
Right.
Joey Porter Jr. and the rest of those guys, they were able to really play a great game. I mean, outside of Marvin Harrison,
Right.
it was
There
hard.
wasn't.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
hard for people to get open against them, and that's an NFL secondary to go against. An NFL wide receiver room there,
Right.
and then offensively they were able to do some things schematically. We saw them kind of line up in almost like a power formation, then
Yeah.
to shift everybody out wide, and then we saw James Franklin and Sean Clifford kind of take advantage of their lineups, and he was able to run off of
Right.
that. If they gave it cushion on the outside, they were throwing slants, and they were able to find
Just
some ways
get
to.
creative.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was honestly a great game by Penn State. Disappointing for them to lose, but that's what happens when you go against a team that could really put
Put
that
the
in
pedal
another
to the
gear
metal.
like Ohio State. So but yeah, Ohio State stays undefeated, number 2 team in the country. They win 44-31, and yeah, like we said, huge game, and kind of the last big test for Ohio State until they go into until Michigan comes
Comes
to
down.
them for
Yeah.
the last game of the regular season. So definitely a measuring stick, and now they'll have a few weeks to kind of make things right and prepare really for that Michigan game against teams that they should be able to handle with no problem
Right.
in the coming weeks. Um, Another big game, a huge game in the SEC. We had number 19 Kentucky going into Tennessee, the number 3 ranked team at the time, and Kentucky just ran into a buzzsaw here.
Yeah. Kentucky just couldn't get anything going.
There was a lot of discussion about the contrast and styles because of how Kentucky kind of runs the almost the slowest pace in the country, and Tennessee's on the higher end of that spectrum. And yeah, that Tennessee offense came out at home, and they continued doing what they were doing. Hendon Hooker was lighting it up. The defense showed up to play. They were forcing Will Levis to not be able to.
To do what he's been doing
Yeah,
all year.
yeah, not
And
impose his will and do what he was able to do all year. Yeah.
yeah, and it's kind of tough when Tennessee has all this momentum and they're taking care of these SEC opponents. I mean, they took care of the big dragon in the opponent with Alabama. So they head into this game with. I mean, Kentucky's not a pushover team either. But I mean, they were able to stop Will Levis from doing what he could do. I know he was really he was kind of banged up. I know he still has that finger injury and things
Hmm.
like that, so that might call for the performance that he had. But again, Tennessee just completely just did what they had to do and continued to just play at a high level, and just interesting to see what they'll be doing next week, and we'll get into that a little later on.
Yeah, yeah. Like you said, big matchup next week, but a huge win for Tennessee here. They keep it rolling. It kind of feels, in a way, like this is their type of year. We'll see how things turn out with them. But yeah, a huge, just to keep that momentum, right? We know they got the big win at Alabama. They continue to keep winning. They pick up a huge win against a ranked SEC team here. And yeah, as we come down to the wire, they're certainly a team to watch. A lot of people, making comparisons to that LSU team that won the national championship, with just how the feel of it, the way that they're playing offense,
The environment.
the environment, putting up the points. So yeah, definitely, um, big things coming for Tennessee, and we'll see how much they could handle and how far they can go. Moving on to probably the biggest Big 12 game. This one was a bit of a letdown. We had Oklahoma State, ranked number 9 at the time, come into number 22 Kansas State. Kansas State was without their starting quarterback. Oklahoma State has been kind of proven a few people wrong all year, and earlier in this season, we kind of went over some overrated, underrated teams. I had Oklahoma State at the time. I said that despite their record, I don't think they don't deserve their ranking, but I think they will come down to earth at some point. I don't see them finishing as one of those top teams.
Right.
This game kind of
Tell it all.
finally proved that. All right, but they played very well so far, but they go into they go on the road, sure, but you go into Kansas State. Kansas State had a lot of hype coming into the season with some of the playmakers on their offense like Deuce Vaughn, etc. They don't have their starting quarterback, and they just completely dominate
Yeah.
Oklahoma State.
I
I
mean,
mean,
the
it
line
was
of
just
scrimmage, they dominated. There's not much that Oklahoma has to take away from this game. They had maybe 3 or 4 tackles for losses. Outside of that, they got completely dominated in the trenches. They couldn't keep up, obviously. I mean, the score tells it all. If you get shut out on the road, I mean, if you get shut out anytime, it's
yeah,
like,
you get shut out, and then your opponent puts up 48 points. It's
yeah,
like it doesn't get much worse than that. So yeah, a tough loss for Oklahoma State. I know afterwards, Mike Gundy kind of admitted that he kind of held some of his guys out during practice for the week, with concerns that he wanted to kind of keep guys healthy and that he's never done that before. So he kind of took some ownership and said that that might have been the reason why they really didn't come out and perform, because he held his starters out and they didn't practice during the week. But yeah, I mean, still that's surprising. I mean, for a team to show that level of drop off, that may have contributed, but
yeah, that's
I mean,
just,
they could have, all their starters could have been coming off an injury. They should have been able to put forth a better game than that. So
right.
but it is what it is. We know these college kids. Week to week, it's sometimes you could
Really,
be completely different as a team in your performance.
right.
And Oklahoma State is still in a strong position to kind of still compete in the Big 12 here. Definitely a letdown game, but I'm sure they'll get back on track and continue trying to evolve and make sure this type of performance doesn't happen again this year.
Right.